Hi, so just would like to introduce you to Andrew Jones. Andrew and I have known each other for the last 25 years, back to when I first arrived in Hong Kong at the Aberdeen Marina Club. And Andrew and I have kept in touch over the years, and especially when I was managing Hotel Icon for Hong Kong PolyU. And um, Andrew is a very active member of PATA at that time and very well connected in the industry. So, Andrew, welcome to the podcast.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Richard. Happy to be here.
Okay, great, terrific. So, perhaps just to sort of lay the foundations, could you tell us a little bit about your 50-year hospitality journey from, how you got into it and then Westin
Sure.
and the founding Sanctuary and also the crossover with I know with Shangri-La you were at Kowloon Shang, so perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure. Yeah, happy to do that. Actually, I've been in the hotel business all my life. My hospitality career, or actually my life, started with my parents, who used to run small country inns in the UK. So I grew up in the industry, and I really enjoyed it. And then I went to the Birmingham College of Food in those days, and it's now called the University College Birmingham. And I started my career there, and then went up to London. Worked in London for a couple of years in food and beverage in those days, and then had an opportunity to go to Bermuda. So I went from London to Bermuda, and then around the 70s I moved to Canada and joined Westin Hotels at the opening of their hotel Toronto in 1970 something, 74 it was actually, 75, and they moved me from Toronto to Calgary and then Calgary to Vancouver. And then in 1983, they moved me to Hong Kong because in those days they actually managed the Kowloon Shangri La. And I ended up as resident manager there for a number of years. And then eventually they moved me to Korea. Um, After Korea as general manager, I then moved back to Hong Kong and had my own company, consulting company, for about 5 years. One of my clients was Marco Polo Hotels, and I helped them open a hotel in Vietnam. And at that time, they then offered me a full time corporate vice presidency um, in Marco Polo Hotels. And I actually moved from operations to vice president of human resources in those days. And then after about 3 years of the corporate life, I was looking for, I guess, what I really wanted to do with my life. And through a program that I went through and a 9 day retreat, I came up with the concept of sanctuary resorts. And that was in 95, 96, 995, 96. And really, it was um, in the program that I did, it was what's going to make you happy? What would you like to do with your life? And I came up with a number of things. And one of them, interestingly, was about I had a concern about the environment. It was still a fledgling interest in those days, but I felt that environmental issues were important even back in the uh, in the mid '90s, and there was a few other things that I was considered about, but it was about working with people and helping other people develop, and so that's how Sanctuary Resorts was born. And I thought I'd get one resort, sit on the porch, manage the resort, and keep me busy until my old age. But then the company, I guess, resonated, our mission and vision resonated with other people. And a lot of people said, well, that's what we're looking for too. So we started to develop one or two other properties as well at that time. We ended up at one point with about 6 properties under our management. But basically, what I was trying to do also was marry my vocation, my hospitality vocation, with my community service. I'm a Rotarian, and I was doing some charitable work with young people in the community. And I wanted to see how I could combine the two, but also I needed to pay the rent. So I needed to make it a profitable business at the same time. So we used the
Right.
resort as a catalyst for community development. and that's the ethos of Sanctuary Resorts.
Okay, great. And you said at one point you had about six under the sort of management flag of Sanctuary,
Sanctuary.
right? Six properties at one
Yep.
point. Okay, great. So obviously since the 90s, I mean, now you've seen the Asia Pacific market transform dramatically. I mean, especially with your association with Pata, and
Hmm.
um, and I know that our paths crossed there because I know with Icon we won some awards for the innovation and
Hmm.
sort of the philosophy behind Hotel Icon. And
Right.
I was interested to know how, from your perspective, how ESG, that whole conversation has evolved in the region, particularly the shift, from, I guess, the sort of Western driven initiatives and Shangri-La, and then to the local adoption. I mean, obviously, the countries that you frequent and visit all have their own local laws and restrictions and that type of thing. But what's your take on it? I mean, how have you seen it transform, and where we are to where we are now, Andrew?
Yeah, well, as I was just saying, I started back in the mid '90s, right? And when I started talking about these sort of things, and our concept was body, mind, spirit, environmentally friendly, and the environmentally friendly was one of the key points of how we wanted to develop our resorts and how we position them within the community and how we worked with the people. And I got a lot of funny looks in those days, and
Mm,
it was sort of really sort of new age and what the hell are you doing type of thing from the corporate world. But I really believed that that was the way to go forward, and the market told me there was an interest in doing that. I mean, I people said that's what we want, so we were there to give people what they wanted. So it was sort of uh, very new, I think, or a new way of looking at business in those days. Well, now it's mainstream. I mean, everybody, I think, is looking at how they can uh, upgrade their ESG platforms, how they position themselves within the communities, and how they want to move ahead, and how they develop their businesses in a responsible manner. I mean, I, I I think I introduced quite a bit of work to PATA, for instance, in responsible sustainable tourism, and became an advisor to them at one point because industry was looking at new ways of doing things. And when you go through some of the challenges in some of these environments and some of these developing countries, you understand that it's very important that they do it in a sustainable and responsible manner.
yeah.
Already we are seeing issues in some communities, and have been for a number of years, where their wastewater or their plastic. Uh, uh, what can I say? I can say recycling, but they're not recycling. That's the problem. The plastic waste is overwhelming. Um,
Mm.
and so it's very important that these issues are addressed, because otherwise it actually ruins the tourism experience of these places. And so it's very
So
important. And
how do you just to interject quickly there?
okay.
In terms of organizations like Pata, I mean, how influential in terms of leadership do you think they can be with a view to this sort of regional tourism policy? I mean, do they have any say? I mean, if you go to Bali or you go to Thailand or you go to Cambodia, Vietnam, I mean, they all have, or even Hong Kong, for that matter, they all have their own different rules and regulations. I mean, has Pata been able to, in your view, push any kind of ESG compliance, whether it be through waste or recycling or anything, especially in hospitality? I mean, sewage waste into the water and that
Mm,
type of thing. I mean,
mm.
has Pata had any? success stories do you that you know of?
Actually, Pata has over the years been, I think, quite influential in some areas. Um, and we
Yeah.
have the Gold Awards. We have the Gold Awards where it showcases businesses that are doing, good work in the community, that
Mm,
they are responsible and sustainable practices being implemented. And we do have chapters around the different areas of Asia Pacific, um,
mm,
and it's an education process, as I think Richard, from your times at the Icon and
mm,
working with the School of Hotel and Tourism Management. It's an educational process, and that's why I spend a lot of time with young people, and we have youth forums in Pata, and we always add sections and opportunities for people to engage in knowledge exchange in these areas, such as responsible, sustainable
mm,
tourism. And I think so. From that point of view, it's a long journey. I mean, it's not going to change
mm.
overnight, and sometimes
Yeah.
the economics of some countries and owners um, aren't always the best intentions. But having said that, I think we are making progress, and it's on the agenda, and it's brought up at the various activities. I'm going in about a week's time to a part of Travel Mart, and I know that responsible and sustainable tourism practices are going to be on the agenda there, in
Mm,
the discussion groups. And we have a youth forum, and we're going to be discussing it with the young people because it's their future, and that's the key,
yeah.
right? It's the future of them and the world. And if we don't get on board with this, then I think it's going to be detrimental to the tourism industry as a whole, because
Mm,
people are more aware of it, and they're very um, I think they're actually looking for opportunities to help support these initiatives. The other thing is, I would say, and I get this now from even city hotels. Now companies are coming to hotels, and before it was a checklist on safety security. Now it's a checklist on what are your ECG,
mm,
programs. How are you relating to how you're handling your waste, and all these sort of things. So companies
yeah.
also, it's in their now business uh, requirements, you know.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that there's a false perception that, by being compliant or pushing the envelope in these areas, that it's going to be an additional operational cost? I mean, or perhaps they think that by doing this, that, guests are going to suffer because you're not going to be able to give as many giveaways or as many this, that, or the other things wrapped. I mean, do you think that there's? I mean, I know with Icon, there were many instances where, I mean, like when we introduced the water faucets into the room instead of the plastic bottles, nobody complained. In fact, most of the guests thought it was a brilliant idea, and a lot of
Mm,
other hotels came to us later on and trying to figure out how we did it. But
mm,
and it was a very simple thing to do. It cost next to nothing, but in that instance, it actually was a big cost saver, and also likely, I mentioned with the Cresswell attire uniforms. I mean, when we replaced those market restaurant buffet uniforms with the apron and the trousers and the jacket and
mm,
everything, and all the chefs' uniforms, actually it was cheaper because we were buying directly from the factory.
mhm,
Your everything was designed by AI, and you're using recycled materials, which are invariably cheaper. So I think sometimes, I don't know what you think, but I think there's often a challenge in terms of getting across to particularly the high end operators,
mm,
that it doesn't necessarily need to cost more either, and the guest doesn't necessarily feel that they're suffering in any way. And some, in fact, many times guests are seeking out hotels
mm.
that are sustainable and have a low carbon footprint. What do you think about that?
Oh no, well, I totally agree, and actually, I'm really interested in the this adaptation of AI into the uniform system. I think that's a brilliant idea,
Mm,
and the recycling
yeah.
of the uniforms and other materials. And I think that's the way forward. In fact, I think a lot of companies are really looking for these sort of innovative ideas, and I think it's the way to go in the future. Um, in fact, I do some advisory work to other companies as well, and we did something similar, as you were saying, about adding a water system into the room. So we got rid of the plastic
Mm.
bottles, and it was money saving. Um,
Yeah.
and I always remember years ago there was a general manager who did a lot of work in Hong Kong, a French general manager, and he said basically he had to give his owners a financial benefit in doing um, uh, I'll say responsible, sustainable, or now ESG type of programs. And he could do that. And he did it based on financial savings and benefits. And so I think there is a misconception sometimes that these things cost more. Now, in some cases, I always remember Giovanni Angelini from Shangri-La saying that when they were building new projects, they did use some materials that were more user friendly, more environmentally friendly, and things like that. But the
Mm.
payback was over time actually saved them money, so it wasn't more
Yeah.
expensive to use some of these things. And I think that that's very important to consider. And I think if you can give a financial justification, no problem. And in lots of cases, you can. And I tell you, the storage of plastic bottles and the wastage and all this sort of thing, we definitely save money when we cut them out. I can tell you that.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point because it's not always just the item itself, is it? I mean, it's there's an entire supply chain that's all linked. So people might think that they're saving by switching over to LED or whatever, but obviously they're only looking at that one component or that one item. But if you look at the whole supply chain, there
Sure.
could be other logistical reasons why that becomes a high problematic item. So and then when I speak to other hoteliers, they all seem to be doing the same thing, and I just when I came across this Cresswell attire uniform solution, I just thought, well, this is a really innovative idea, because when we experimented with it at Icon and I talked to Mark Russell, the founder, it just seemed that nobody was doing anything like this. And it's very much a kind of low hanging fruit.
Mm,
I can remember all the different hotels I worked in, and then you go in the storeroom, and the housekeeper tends to be the keeper of all the uniforms, and there's just piles and piles of uniforms going back years. Some
right.
hotels might give them away to local schools or whatever, but again, they're uniforms, so it's not like giving away clothing. Who wants to wear a uniform? But when we what I like about their solution is that they're using AI to do the design, because designers can cost a lot of money too. And
Mm,
then you get the option to choose as the buyer what recycled, whether you want maize or bamboo or plastic or
mm,
whatever it happens to be. And then the supply chain pain point is taken out. You don't have to do tons of measurements and everything for every single stuff, because they can just order it direct, small, medium,
mm,
and large. And then they'll what I like about it as well is that they'll take back everything. So you could almost like sign a 3-4 year contract with them and say, okay, we'll buy X amount of uniforms from you over this period. And they're technically like buying maybe 2/3 of the cost back from you, or
mm,
taking it back and recycling it for other purposes like laundry bags or hats or umbrellas or whatever, which again they're used by the hotel. So I just think that it's a very clever way that AI is being used in sustainable hospitality,
yeah.
with a very simple solution, which really irons out a lot of pain points that many hotels have. Because I think that the problem with uniforms is that you tend to get, there's F&B is that I want this, I want that, and then the housekeeper wants this, that, and the other, and everybody has their own thing, but there's no synergy. So I was just curious whether you thought that, I mean, I know from practical based usage of this that it works, but do you think this is a strong selling point? I mean, because if you I think there's a great PR story as well for a hotel here.
Well, yeah, I was just saying the same thing, thinking the same thing. It was, I mean, I think this is very innovative and very creative, and I think that's a really a good start. And but also a couple of things. One is that the design and the way it's using AI and is new, and it's a story in itself, and then coupled with um, the recycling of the materials as well. Because, as you said, I
Mm,
mean, and I've been in the same boat. You know, you go down to housekeeping, and there's a whole pile of plastic bags full of old uniforms and stuff. And what are you going to do with them? They go to the landfill or
yeah,
something crazy, and up until now, there's been very few people doing recycling of cloth and materials. I think it's coming more and more, but this is, an innovative way of doing it, and I think that's what people are looking at. Um, is how do we take these items and recycle them and make them into something more productive, or we
yeah,
don't have to use the landfills, and I think that's really good. And the first people who get into these things and try them, I think will be ahead of the game, to be honest with you. And it's
yeah.
a great
I
story,
agree.
great story, you know.
Yeah, I think the other thing I was telling them was that, one of the big waste areas is also condemned linen and towels
Well,
and bed,
yeah,
bathrobes and things like that. And I mean, if you can take back all that stuff, because quite
yeah,
often it can be a small tear, which at home you just, keep using it, but you can't in a hotel environment, right? But, or even slippers, these guest slippers that end up in the bin after one use. I mean, all that stuff can be collected and then downcycled,
recycled.
upcycled into other uniforms, which is good. So it keeps the whole thing, or other, like laundry bags and things like that. So I think it's
Yeah.
a brilliant idea. And I think it's more about how they can scale this. I think if they can get it out with a hotel company that can make a really great story about it, I think it's or even cruise ships. I mean, you imagine the number of cruise ships and
Mm.
because they get a very much higher turnover of staff, often Asian staff, Filipinos
Mm.
working on these ships. Um, but yeah, I think it's a really cool idea.
But
But
I
looking
think
ahead,
also
I
just
mean,
what you were
on
saying,
yeah,
though,
go on.
Richard, was I was just going to
Yeah.
say that when you were talking originally about uniforms, I was also thinking already about the linens and the other cloth materials,
Mm.
right? That could be also brought into the same program. I mean, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, true. Actually, yeah, the bathrobes, because quite
Oh,
often
yeah,
hotels have, that kind of cotton type bathrobe, but then they have the fluffy towel
yeah,
type.
yeah.
So those lighter ones that you might use in a spa or going down to the pool, would be ideal for that type of thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, good
Do
idea.
you think that? Do you think other? You think I'm just thinking about AI in general because I was
Mm.
talking to Singapore Institute of Technology recently about talking to them about how AI might be used in hospitality. I mean, have you come across any other areas where you think AI might play a role in helping guests, not only make more sustainable choices during their stay, but more about how they might be marketed or in other ways. And any thoughts on that? Have you come across anything?
Well, I mean, I think it's the hotel industry as an innovator isn't always the first first in line, to be honest with
True.
you. But
Yeah.
having said that, personally, I'm using AI for a lot of reports and some delving into some initiatives that we're looking at, and I think it will become more and more. Let me say that way. I think that's just the way the world's going. So it's then how do
Yeah.
we adapt some of these things? We've now adapted a lot of technology, or adapting more technology, particularly in the back of the house areas, and how it relates to, the accounting and some of those areas of the operations. Um, and I think it will have an effect. I mean, obviously now, one of the major areas for people are staffing, and how we're going to find people to come and run the hotels, and so we've got to be more innovative and creative in these areas, and AI seems to be helping in a lot of those sort of areas. We've just got to figure out, the best way of using them,
Yeah.
and integrating it into our other systems. But yes, it's obviously going to be a way of the future, and then it's a matter of,
Mhm.
I haven't got specific, say we used AI for this, that, and the other, but I mean, when we generate reports, of course, and things like that, then
Yeah.
it's using some of that, or it's helping. I mean, you can spit out a report in like seconds now. If you just put in the right prompts. I mean, the prompting is the important thing now.
Sure,
So,
sure, sure. Well, I think that's where, going back to the uniform thing, if you've got a resort like a Banyan Tree or Angsana, I mean, they're two brands under the same,
mm,
umbrella, but they're all both quite different. One's more of a five-star, and then you've got all these different themed outlets. So I think that if you can imagine I remember when we opened Icon, we must have spent, I don't know, maybe 50 to 100,000 US dollars on design fees, and then
mm,
quite often, they run out of fabric and things like that. So
mm.
if you're able to harness that in a way that, I mean,
Well,
you're not going to run out of recycled waste, are you? So
right.
you've got a plentiful supply.
The,
But
the
yeah,
other
I think
area
it's yeah, go
I can
on.
say the other area, Richard, is probably, like in the old, the guest compendium and stuff like that. And it's like, so I want to go for dinner tonight, and what's close, and
Yeah,
what's Japanese, and and all this sort of thing. I think AI would probably be, it's like asking, I'll say, Siri or whatever, or to the hotels in, I mean, concierge online type of thing, which will be an AI
yeah,
generated. What's the locus, the nearest good Japanese restaurant, blah blah blah, or something, and that's how it'll give you stuff very quickly and things like that. So we don't have compendiums,
yeah.
which again saves costs and things like that. I mean, I think you know. That's that. These are the sort of areas which will help a lot, and if they're looking,
Yeah,
if a guest is looking for a certain thing, in the city or something.
that's right. I mean, I was listening to a podcast the other day about chefs in the UK using it, and they're
Oh, right.
using it with all their menu planning and all their purchasing and finding suppliers that they never knew existed,
Mm,
and even working with other chefs in the same town or the same region to do bulk buying, and then
mm,
setting up a sort of a commissary kitchen. So there's a lot of ways people are starting to think outside the box, rather, so in a more of a sharing,
mm.
collaboration, kind of way, rather than just, I'm running this bar or this pub and I'm just going to do it my way and buy from
Well,
XYZ. I mean, if you imagine the economies of scale and in terms of delivery and logistics, I mean, it's and also just knowing what's selling and what isn't and how to do your
right.
ordering. I mean, it's gonna really transform, that side of it, I think.
The other thing, Richard, is I saw online the other day that somebody booked their whole itinerary using AI. Right?
Mm,
They were
wow,
using
yeah,
AI to book they were going on a trip somewhere, and they used AI. I'm not sure what they prompted it, but they got the flights and it's where to stay and their travel,
yeah,
and it was all AI. It was all AI
it's
generated.
amazing, yeah,
Yeah.
incredible,
So I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. I think,
if we can get
we're
better
only
at
only
it, scratching
yeah,
the surface.
it's just scratching the surface, yeah.
No.
So, if you were to, I mean, I know you talk to, as a consultant to, hospitality owners of firms. Um, if What would you give them advice on if they were just sort of saying, okay, we need to really get into this now in the Asia Pacific region? What would be the most sort of practical advice, based on your experience? I mean, what are the low hanging fruit, maybe not the not so obvious things that you could give them advice on? in this
Um,
area?
well, if you're talking about AI, for instance, I mean, I was talking to a gentleman the other day, and he was saying he wants to bring AI into his company and everything else. But the reality is, it's a long term. It's a an older established company, so you've got to really do a lot of training and development of the people within the company to use it
Yeah.
productively and efficiently, and then you can start to see the benefits. You can't just say to somebody, oh, use AI or whatever it is, or this is how it works. You have to develop the people and spend time to train them well. So there's going to be some investment to be made in bringing the people up to the level that they can understand it, particularly in I'll say the legacy companies or some of the older establishments. So I think
Mm.
that's, you can't just chuck it in there and say, well, get on with it. We want to use AI now. It's an educational
Yeah.
process again, right? So I think that's important. In general terms, I mean, I think young people. I mean, I remember Pata did. I mean, Pata did a report years ago on the millennial travel, and I know we've got a couple of generations since then. But when I was chairman of Pata, I was out there and I was sort of, extolling the virtues of what young people were asking about and what they wanted. And they wanted real experiences. They wanted to commune with the actual community. They wanted to get to know the people. They wanted, real examples, good cuisine, the
Mm.
local cuisine, things like that. And and to be honest with you, I read that and I thought, well, that's what I want too. So I think
Mm.
sometimes, the basic fundamentals, we all want the same thing, whether we're a millennial or, I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes I look at myself, I think I'm a second millennial, but because of
Mm.
my age. But the thing is that,
Yeah.
there are some basic, I think, needs of people and how they want to interact and relate to people. Now, you know, if I'm going to plan my itinerary and I can do that quicker and easier using my AI or my app, that's great. But when I get there, I want to really be able to find out what's in the area. I want to work with
Mm.
the local people. I want to see how I can get to know the community and experience, those sort of interactive um, opportunities. So, I mean, these are the things that we got to look at. I mean, we talk about, over tourism and all of these things. So, some of these other issues of, destination management and how people are traveling and where they're traveling to need to be discussed as well. As local
Yeah.
communities, you have to respect their wishes as well.
That's true, actually. And I was just looking this the other day, and I think if you I was we're planning to go to Zermatt for in
Mm,
Switzerland for Christmas, and I have never been there before, and I needed some winter boots, right? And I thought, okay, I'll ask AI, ChatGPT, what would be the
right.
best boot. So I put in where it was, what the temperatures were likely to be. Well, I didn't even need to say that, but I just said it was
Mm,
for only a week and I wouldn't be skiing. And then it came up with a list of about, I don't know, six different brands. Now, if I did the same thing with Google,
mm.
I'd be getting so much sponsored
Oh,
advertising,
yeah.
companies that had paid for click per view and all
Mm,
that. Whereas with AI, it was sort of a impartiality. It was
mm,
based on the logic of if I said I was going to, I was an Olympic skier and I was planning to, ski down the Matterhorn or whatever it was, I'd get a different they'd give me a
mm,
completely
mm,
different variety. But obviously, for my needs, it was very impartial. And then it gave me the links, but there was no advertising, there was no sponsor. I'm just wondering how long it'll take before that creeps into AI. You know what I mean? I mean, at the moment, it seems to be very neutral, but I found that very refreshing and
mm.
without somebody trying to sell you something. But I just wonder whether it's a matter of time before that comes around. But
Well, yeah,
that
I
was
think you're
something I
right.
did notice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are getting tired of all the ads and all of the, you only
Yeah.
have to, actually these days you only have to send or say something about something and it seems to pop up on your
Yeah.
browser or something like that, and that's a bit of a worry sometimes. But
Yeah.
um, but I think yes, you're right. AI, and whether it's Chat GPT or one of the other ones, um, they seem to be just the facts. Which hopefully
Yeah,
that's good
yeah,
until somebody sees a way of monetizing it, I guess, because that seems
yeah.
to be the way of the world.
That's right. That's right.
So
But
and then
yeah, you're right. You're right about the prompting, because I was on Instagram, and there was a girl or a guy who was working out and similar age group to myself, and I just
mm,
put I don't know, I think I even commented, but I put a like on it, and then shortly I started getting bombarded with content related to fitness and health and
oh
nutrition and
yeah.
all that. So yeah, I mean, you do feel like there's this sort of constant monitoring of everything you do, for your information or for your pleasure, FYP or whatever it is. But yeah, it's AI sometimes is a bit more refreshing in that
I,
sense.
I think it's
Yeah,
a two-edged sword, though, to be honest with you, because sometimes now you can't. It's difficult to tell, particularly if you're not that experienced, is what's real and what's AI, because there are
yeah,
you know
that's true.
images generated, and I mean, in a local group that I was with, somebody actually created a conversation between two people talking about a local group that I'm associated with, and it was two people talking about the history of this group and what they'd done, and in the community and stuff. And the thing was, they weren't real. I
Oh
mean,
wow.
they-
Yeah.
somebody had just fed in the history of the group type of thing, this club, and and it generated these two people talking about it, but they weren't real people. They
Incredible.
were just,
Wow.
it was incredible, I tell you, and it was very factual, and it was really good. But
Mm,
having said that, you know, you could have said, well, that's two of the members, or whatever it was. So you've got to be really careful about how you put things on, and whether or not you see now on some of these platforms the influencers and stuff like that, and you really think, well, are they really there, or are they
yeah.
just take,
Yeah.
you know so things like that. So it's really it's going to be interesting how it's monitored and controlled and things like that.
Yeah.
I think
Well, I
going
think
back
I
to
think you're right, and I think that eventually what will happen is that
mm,
how things go back in a circle. I think that people will ultimately seek out stuff that is more
yeah,
authentic and original, rather than something. I
exactly.
mean, because I can tell if somebody sent me something, a comment
Mm,
even, that's written
mm,
by AI. So because it's just not their language. So I think that ultimately it'll come back to more authenticity, and again, that's why I kind of like this uniform thing, because like you
mm,
said, it's only going to design what you put into it, and the more authentic you can create your brand, and
well,
and whether it's for Asian people
yeah.
or African people or whoever's wearing it, the
Mm,
more original it's going to be. Yeah,
mm. Well, and
yeah.
particularly when you have a theme type of concept within the property,
Concept.
or
Yeah, yeah,
is it a resort, or is it you know I think that would could be really good. um and I think that also it's going to be interesting to see, the relativity of how people operate in the future. I think going back to what we
yeah.
originally were saying, it's about how we look at our communities, and how we work with them and the local people, how we look after the nature of the place in a responsible,
Mm,
sustainable manner, in order to make sure that we maintain the quality of the not only the tourism, but also the quality of life for the community.
brilliant. And I think that's a great note to end on, Andrew. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pause this, let it flow. Okay.
Mm, sure, sure.
All right.
Okay.
So we'll start at 8 minutes, which is now.